Okay, so the Halo TV show is out. I have watched the first episode, and I've got some thoughts. I've got some fucking thoughts. Did I like it? Yes. I think overall it was a very good first episode of a TV show. I was thoroughly entertained. I was enjoying the story, even when it wasn't action, when it was down in the sort of like world building and character building parts. I was really into it. And then the final 5 minutes happened, and I'm really conflicted about where the fuck this show is going. So, it's really hard to get my thoughts across. Right, I kind of need to recap the entire fucking episode, so bear with me here. So, we start the show off on the planet of Madrigal, so that is a colony, and on this colony we have sort of insurrectionists who are basically trying to become independent from the UNSC. And the only thing we know about the UNSC is pretty much that their control, that's sort of like the main human empire, if you will, that controls the galaxy, right? And in this, we sort of get some exposition from this fucking Scottish guy. Hey, on a table, he's saying like, oh yeah, you've killed Marines, but you can't kill a Spartan, you know, they're unkillable, they can kill 100 men by themselves, blah, blah, blah. So he starts bigging up the Spartans and sort of, you know, the myth of them, which is pretty cool. So then we cut to the main, like the leader of this insurrectionist town camp thing, and he's like, where's my daughter? And she's like, oh, you know what she's like? And then it cuts to his daughter, who's off beyond the city limits or the town limits with her friends, and they're looking for basically drugs. They're looking for magic mushrooms, which are infused with hydrogen because their planet is very dense in hydrogen, as she says, picking these plants. Hence why the UNSC is always here trying to get their hydrogen. So she gets these plants, gives them to her mates, and they start huffing this shit. But she sees something glint up the hill, so she goes and investigates, and she sees a ship. But it's not a UNSC ship, which even if she did see a UNSC ship, she'd still be like, oh fuck, that's bad. This is a ship she's never noticed before. So she runs back, bumps into her friends, who are high as fuck now, and she's like, right, we need to go. And they're like, why do we need to go? She grabs onto her mate, she's pulling her, it's like, no, we need to go now. And they're like, why? And then boom, her mate gets her head blown clean off. Not even blown off, fucking evaporated. I've always, like, we've all seen it before, like, we've always thought that Predator was obviously the inspiration for the elites. It's just that the Predator's plasma cannon was on its shoulder, and when it fired and hit things, they blow up. That's what happened in this elite's plasma rifle, or whatever the fuck it was using. It fucking evaporated this bitch's head, and took me by surprise. I was like, oh fuck, gore, great, this is amazing. So then they all start running, and they all get picked off one by one. Like, they're blown to bits. Like, somebody's legs get blown off, and then like the force from the blast blasts their fucking upper torso into a tree, and it lands. I was like, fuck, this is some gnarly shit. And then one of our other mates, she's running, leg blown off, she falls to the ground, fucking grasping at it like, then head blown off. It was great. The brutality of these elites was fantastic, and I was loving every second of it. So she's running, she's the only survivor. Her name is Quan, by the way. She's running the fuck out there. Runs back to her town, who've signalled the alarm because they see what's going on. And they're like, alright, the UNSC, they're coming, the UNSC. So she runs up to her dad. She's the last one through the gate. She runs up to her dad, and he's like, oh, the UNSC's here. She's like, no, it's not UNSC. And he's like, well, what the fuck is it then? She's like, you'll find out. Sure enough, he finds out as these elites blast through the door, and all these people, all these insurrectionists, they're using their fucking AK-47s, which are, 500 years, 600 years out of date by this point. So laughably, like, underpowered weapons. They're firing against these elites. These bullets are just bouncing off their energy shields, which is very true to the lore. And then these elites just go to town. Literally, they go through this town just murdering everyone. And it's great. Like, just seeing the brutality of the Covenant, of the elites, as they really, truly want to wipe out humanity, is great. So they're just killing everyone. Women, children. Fucking great. And then out the corner of her eye, it's like, oh, what's that? You see a pelican flying. And then that's when you're like, oh fuck, here we go. Pelican flies over, boom, Chief lands. Fucking superhero lands and everything, Chief lands. And not gonna lie, I got chills. I was like, oh fuck, here we go. And Chief proceeds to smack the fuck out of all these elites. And then the rest of his team comes in, Silver Team. They come in and they help, and they're just tearing up these elites. And the battle's really good. Like, it's really, really good. But there is some CGI in here that just really doesn't hold up. Like when it's cutting from actor to clearly CGI models, it's jumping about, or this laughably bad fucking CGI assault rifle that Chief throws to the ground. It's just really bad. But other than that, it's good. Majority of the CGI in this show, like a good 95% of it, is solid, especially for a TV show. It's really good. There's only 1 or 2 instances where you're just like, oh, that's unfortunate. But other than that, it's all good. So Quan is the only survivor. Chief saves her, and she's fucking terrified because she's just seen basically everyone that she knows just die. So then Chief and the rest of these Spartans, Silver Team, they leave her. They're like, right, we'll come back for you, maybe. Right, bye. So they go and investigate what Quan discovered, which was the Covenant ship, which is, it's just a phantom, really, that's on top of this cliff. So Chief splits the team up. Him and the sniper lassie, I think her name's Kai, they go inside the cave that they were excavating, whilst the other two go and deal with the phantom off screen. So they go in this cave, which is a stone forerunner structure, and the female Spartan, she says the line, she says, this cave is not a natural formation, which, not gonna lie, that cracked a wee smile for me. I quite enjoyed that. So they look about, and they're being spied on by an elite, but they don't know that. So they find this forerunner artifact thing. Chief goes to pick it up, he touches it, forerunner glyphs start appearing on it, and then they start emanating from it, and then we see the forerunner symbol being projected from this thing. And then we see, from Chief's point of view, he's having flashbacks to like a memory or something of, like, you know, family picnic with a white dog and all that. So Kai, I think it's Kai, the Spartan that's with him, she snaps him out of it, and he's like, oh, sorry, I don't know what the fuck happened just there. Then the elite that was spying on them, he's like, oh, I need to fucking report this. He fucking bolts. They chase after him. The elite activates his active camo, and it made the noise from Halo Combat Evolved, like that classic, you know, this noise. And I loved it. I was like, yes, that's the noise. So he runs out the cave. We see that Quan has sort of followed them up there, because she's like, where the fuck do I go? Where the fuck do I go? He fucking just knocks her out the way. He's like, get the fuck out of my way. Jumps in a Banshee and flies off. She's knocked out. The Spartans meet up, and they're like, oh fuck, he got away. And Chief's like, right, you three, you go back in that ship. I'm going to take this bitch and this artifact, and I'm going to fly back myself in the Condor, and I'll meet you back in Reach. And the other Spartans are like, that's sort of against protocol, Chief. We shouldn't really be doing that. And he's like, just fucking do what I tell you, right? I'll meet you back there. And they're like, okay, right, you're the Master Chief. That's one thing that annoyed me. They kept calling him Master Chief. They're like, Master Chief over here, Master Chief over here. It's like, call him Chief or John. You know, don't call him Master Chief. It's like, call him Chief or John. Only the really higher ups call him Master Chief. Like, you're on his level. Just call him Chief. Not like you're Spartans. You're like brothers and all that. And he's calling you Kai and by your names. Call him John. Call him John or Chief. Come on. That's just one thing that niggled me, but that's fine. So after that, we cut to Reach. So we see Reach in all its glory, and then we cut to Dr. Halsey's lab, where she's basically watching Chief's feed where he interacts with this Forerunner artifact thing, and she's like, fucking yes, I knew there was more aliens out there that weren't Covenant, this is amazing. So then this Admiral woman walks in, who's Margaret Parangoski, who is from the books, so when I seen it was her, I was like, oh fuck, that's a big deal. But remember, I'm just looking at this from the TV show point of view. Like, I'm trying to ignore the books completely. This is just from what I know on the show. So she comes in and she's like, oh, you know, you need to start acting better, otherwise we're going to cut your funding and all that. And it's like, why the fuck would you cut the funding of, like, the only thing that's working against these aliens? Like, why the fuck? She explains that, yeah, Chief found this artifact. I'm going to get Miranda Keys to work with the survivor, see what she can get out of her. And Halsey's like, fine, but I want that artifact to come here. I want to investigate it. And then they have a back and forth of like, no, it's not your department, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, fine, whatever. The Admiral woman, she goes to leave, but she notices that in another room, like through a wee window, we don't see what it is, but she looks through and she's like, I thought I told you not to work in this anymore. She's like, oh, I've stopped. Honestly, I've stopped working on it. She's like, Halsey, you can't fool me, I know what you're doing, blah blah, fucking cancel this. And she leaves. And of course, we know it's Cortana, but the rest of the people going into this blind won't know that. So then we cut to, who's it we cut to after this? We cut to High Charity, I believe. So yeah, we see High Charity in all its big mushroomy glory. We see inside High Charity, we see the 4-hour key ship, and then we see the High Prophet of Mercy. And he's walking, well no, he's not walking in, he's hovering in on his wee fucking seat. CGI in him looked really good. I mean, at least I thought it looked really good. Teeth were a little weird, but other than that, I thought it looked really good. So he comes in and he starts talking to this woman, and she's all like, they're talking in their alien language, and she's like, I told you it would be there, you know, I know these artifacts, you know, this is why you keep me around, blah blah blah. And he explains like, yeah, it was there, but we're unable to secure it, blah blah. And then she gets a bit uppity towards Mercy. She's like, oh, send a battalion after them, blah blah, we need to hunt this down, blah blah. You know, and he's like, whoa, calm down, like, don't worry, we'll get it in time. And it's revealed that, oh, it's a human lassie that's working with them. And I just found that weird that she sort of has this sort of power. You know, she gave off this sort of vibe of like, I'm in command here. I'm like, why the fuck are you giving the Prophet of Mercy commands? And why is he not like slapping you about? Like, what the fuck? Like, yes, the Covenant have kept humans about to activate Forerunner artifacts when they run into them, but they've always kept them as sort of like tools or pets. But this lassie's like pampered and shit. Like, I just find it a bit weird. Interesting, but a bit weird. Mercy looked good, but he just looked like a normal sort of council member. Like, he didn't have the big headdress with the wee halo holographic projection on the front. Like, you know, he's supposed to have the big headdress to signify that he's one of the 3 high prophets. And the elite honor guard behind him just was a normal elite miner. It wasn't an honor guard. So if they could fix that design, that'd be great. So then we cut to Miranda Keyes. She's having a conversation with Quan, sort of like basically a video call, saying like, you're a survivor, we need you to basically, we want to record a message from you basically saying that, yeah, aliens attacked you and it was the Spartans in the UNSC that saved you. That way we can sort of unite humanity against this common threat of the Covenant, of these aliens. And Quan's like, no, I'm just going to say that it was the Spartans that killed my entire town, my family. Yeah, I'm just going to do that, fuck you. And Miranda's like, okay, right, we'll talk more when you get here. But then her dad comes in, Captain Jacob Keyes. He basically is like, oh, I heard it didn't go well. She says, no, it didn't really go well. He's like, well, it's too bad that that Quan lassie, that she succumbed to her injuries. And she's like, succumbed to her injuries? What the fuck are you on about? Like, she was perfectly fine when I talked to her. And he just gives her this look of like, come on, don't make me spell it out for you. And then she clicks on, it's like, oh, what, fucking Article 72? We can't just kill her. And he's like, well, we're gonna fucking have to. And he's like, that's not right. And he's like, I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying it's what we have to do. Okay, elephant in the room. Yes, the Keyes family, they're black, right? They've been race swapped. I don't really fucking care, right? This is a completely different timeline and universe, and things are going to be a little bit different, and I don't care. In fact, I really like the actress that plays Miranda Keyes. I thought she was really good, and I like the guy that played Captain Keyes. Didn't see enough of him though, but I'm excited to see more of him. So yeah, I really don't care about that. Usually I do hate the whole just race swapping for the sake of race swapping in movies and adaptations. Usually I hate that shit, but in this, it works for me, and I don't really care, so take with that what you will. But anyway, moving on, just had to get that out of the way. So after that, we cut to Chief sitting with Quan as she's eating. He makes a wee joke about like, oh yeah, I eat nuts and bolts and all that because I'm a robot. Oh, it's a joke, by the way. She's like, I know. It was alright, it wasn't cringe. It was like, oh yeah, I could see Chief try and make humour like that. And she's like, oh, we've met before, by the way. And he's like, what? When? He's like, oh, there was an insurrectionist meeting on a planet somewhere, and you kind of showed up and just killed my mum and all the insurrectionists in there. And Chief's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, orders were changed, you know, it was supposed to be, you know, disperse them, but then it was changed to kill them because they were a threat, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, how dare you? It's like, oh, this is awkward. But then we see from Chief's point of view, actually, there's a wee scene before this, where Chief's sort of just sitting by himself as he's sort of having this existential crisis, right, where he's looking at the Forerunner artifact and he's remembering the memories that he saw or something, and he's not feeling right, so he goes and runs a diagnostic check, and everything's saying he's A-okay. He's like, no, you're good, there's nothing up with you. And he's like, right, what's going on with me? And at that bit, like, it was giving me some serious RoboCop vibes, which I like, because RoboCop is my favourite movie of all time, and it's one of the best movies of all time. I will fight anyone who disagrees with that. It's fucking one of the best movies of all time. But yeah, it was giving me RoboCop vibes, which I was liking. We're seeing a man struggle with his humanity. So he's talking to her during dinner after this existential crisis. Like, he's really like, sort of, what the fuck do I do here? We see from his point of view, on his heads-up display, we see her face come up, her name, Quan, and he says, right, Article 72, which basically means kill the bitch. And I just find it funny where, like, he's looking and he turns to her and he's like, what's your name? And she's like, oh, it's Quan. He's like, ah, right, okay, just making sure. It's like, of course it's her, Chief. It's clearly fucking her in the picture. But anyway, I digress. So Chief is like, oh, okay, right, I'll be back in a minute. So he leaves, and we see him fiddling about with some of the control panels or whatever. Then we cut back to Reach in this sort of like briefing room, and they're just like, right, we've gave the order to Chief, but he's not killed her yet. What should we do? And they're like, right, cut the air supply to his suit just to knock him out. Don't kill him, we just want to knock him out, and cut down the air supply in the ship so she basically suffocates to death. They're like, okay, we do that. We cut back to the ship. We see Quan get up. She's like, whoa, I feel fucking woozy. And Chief's like, yeah, so do I for some reason. And he basically figures out what happens. They both fall down. The Chief manages to fight through it. He like punches the floor and like activates the air again. Like he knows where the override is or some shit. And then they're all panicking back on Reach. They're like, why the fuck did they turn that off? And why is he turning off the security cameras? What the fuck is going on over there? And they're like, oh god, he's gone rogue. He's gone fucking rogue. And Halsey's just like, no, just let's calm down, Admiral. So this is like Admiral Prangoska who's doing all this shit. She's like, oh, he's gone rogue. I knew these Spartans couldn't be trusted. It's like, well, no, let's calm down. He's just, Chief John's just a little confused at the moment. So then Quan, she picks up a battle rifle, which looks exactly like the games, so it's awesome. And she points at Chief, and she's like, I can't trust you. What the fuck is going on here? What happened? Blah, blah. And Chief's like, you need to trust me. She's like, I can't trust you. And he's like, bitch, this is Mark 6 Mjolnir armor, coated titanium. That gun will do nothing to me. She's like, still. So then he takes his helmet off, and we see his face, and he does this to make her trust him, which this is where the show divides me and it conflicts me, because thematically and story-wise, that makes sense that you do that. Like, I could easily see Chief doing that in the books, and we wouldn't mind that would happen in the books because we wouldn't see his face. But because this is live action, we do see his face. That's where we're having the problem with it. And yes, they could have shot it from behind and we still wouldn't have seen his face, but we'd have seen her reaction and it would still have the same impact. Yes, they could have done that, but they're not doing that. So this is where I'm conflicted. So he shows his face and he's like, please, can you trust me now? She's like, okay. So then the ship is on autopilot and it's going to land on Reach. And Admiral Prangoski, they're freaking out now because they're like, why the fuck has he removed his helmet? She's kind of like us. She's like, why has he removed his helmet? Why has he removed his helmet? He's gone rogue. Oh, fuck. So she basically mobilises the entire base. They're like, right, Chief is landing here. Intercept him here with all the forces that we can muster. Take him alive if possible, but like he's gone rogue. So we basically see all the Marines gearing up. Like, I mean hundreds of Marines gearing up. Lots of Warthogs. We see the Mac cannon, like see the Mac gun that we actually man on the last mission of Reach, like that massive railgun. We see one of them aiming at the Chief on the Pelican. I thought that was pretty cool. And then we see his Spartan team, Silver team, they're gearing up and they're walking out, but they're intercepted by Halsey, who's like, right, I know your orders were to kill him, but don't, like, he's just not himself right now, just take him alive, talk to him. And they're just like, well, yeah, he's our mate, we're not going to kill him, Halsey, fuck's sake. So I like that little interaction there. Chief's trying to override the thing, but it's not working because, he's not the best technical person. He usually has an AI for that. So they crash land. Helmet's still off. He hasn't nor will he put it back on. He crash lands and they're like, right, what the fuck do we do? Like, Quan's like, Chief, what do we do here? And he's like, I don't know. They're surrounded, and then I think Chief touches the Forerunner artifact, and it sends out a pulse wave. It EMPs everything, but it powers the Pelican that they're on, and then they get into there, and they fly off. And that's the end of the episode. Okay? So, this is where the show really throws me in for a loop, because I can see where they're going for this. Because when I was watching this, I was like, holy shit, they're doing Halo 5. Like, they're doing the Rogue Chief storyline that they promised through the marketing campaign. Like, this is what they're doing. Chief's gone rogue. They're going to send somebody to hunt him down. Yeah, they're doing fucking Halo 5 here. This is mental. Which, if we all remember, back in the day, we were excited about this storyline in Halo 5. We were excited about the prospect of, hunting the truth of, holy shit, in Halo 5, is the UNSC going to be the bad guys? Are we going to fight like Spartan 3s and Spartan 4s that come after us as we play as Chief? Agent Locke, like what's going to happen there? Like, we were excited about that Rogue Chief storyline. But it made sense that we were excited for that storyline in the game, because it was Halo 5, right? Halo 5. We'd had 4 games beforehand to build up the Chief and his legendary status. And this, they're leading with that at the end of the first episode. Chief gone rogue is like, gone rogue from what? We've just been introduced to him. We barely know this world. Remember, I'm just looking at this from just what the TV show has shown us. I'm ignoring all lore that I know beforehand. From what we've just been told in the show, like, we barely know what the UNSC is or what their reach is. We barely know like their military structure and their political structure. We barely know what the Spartans are, how many they are, who the key players are. We barely know anything about the Covenant or the Insurrections. Like, we barely know this world. So the fact that Chief has gone rogue is like, yeah, that's bad, but how bad is it? Like, how many other Spartans are there? Like, this is just one Spartan. How concerned should we be? How much of a monumental thing is this? It's like, it just doesn't have the impact that it should. Like, if this was a season finale thing where the Chief goes rogue, after 8 episodes of like building up of like, right, this is who Chief was, this is what he's went through, this was his upbringing, this is what he's done, yeah, that's understandable and it would have a massive impact. But the end of the first episode, it just sort of falls flat for me, just a wee bit. And I know where they're going to go with the storyline now. The fact that they can override his armour remotely means that Chief is probably not going to wear his armour for a good bit. He's going to have to take it off just so he can move around and whatever. So Chief's going to be out of his armour a lot in this show until somebody can like jerry-rig it or whatever and fucking hack into it and make it that the UNSC can't track him and all that. It's going to be a whole thing of like, oh, we're going to get Poncho Chief. That's what it is. The actor, Pablo Schreiber or whatever. We're going to see him in the poncho. We're going to get Poncho Chief minus the armour, and we're going to see him go about these insurrectionist worlds, learning about the atrocities that the Spartans did, that the UNSC did. He's going to learn his humanity again through Quan as she takes him through this journey through the slums of the galaxy. Which, me saying that out loud, that's interesting. That is an interesting storyline. That's something I want to see. That is a good, interesting concept. But it's not a story for Chief. Like, see if this was a completely brand new Spartan, like still part of the Spartan 2 project, but see if this was like Spartan, 067 or whatever. Hey, that's interesting. I tried really hard there not to say 069, but 067. See if this was Spartan 067, fucking Tommy or whatever, who was going through this existential crisis. That's interesting as fuck, right? That's a good storyline. It's a storyline I want to see, but it's not the one I want. I want to see that storyline, but it's not the one I want for Chief. Chief's storyline is just straight up hero, badass, man a few words, but still conflicted. That's what I want from Chief. No nonsense. He gets in there, he does the job, we can trust the Chief. That's what I want. Because the whole Chief trying to find his humanity thing, that really only came about once 343 took over. That only really came about in Halos 4 and 5. And they did that very well, I feel. But what made that work was the fact that Chief was learning his humanity from an AI. You know, it took an AI woman to make this human man find his humanity, and that was the sort of ironicness of it. Like, that's what was engaging about it. But now he's just going to learn this humanity from like this fucking war orphan, essentially. Which, again, aye, that's interesting, but for another Spartan. At the start of this I said, oh, I'm getting some serious Robocop vibes from it. But now, after this episode ended, I'm getting some serious Robocop 3 vibes from it. And that's kind of worrying. I mean, it's a guilty pleasure movie for me, but it's not a good movie. If the following happens, then they have just straight up copied Robocop 3. If Halsey goes rogue and meets up with the Chief and helps him and fixes his armour, and then Chief ends up flying in a fucking jetpack, as he's also hunted by a superior Spartan, then yeah, this is straight up Robocop 3. So we'll see what happens. So the sci-fi story fan in me, I'm liking where this is going, but the Halo fan in me is just like, no, don't do this. This is not what I want. This is not what I want from Halo. But it is a sci-fi story that I want to see, but just not from Chief. So yeah, this is where I really am conflicted. Like, I know there's people out there who are like, no, this was great, this is, Halo was here, this is one of the best TV shows ever. And then there's people on the opposite ends of the spectrum who are like, nah, this was a piece of shit, one of the worst video game adaptations of all time, this show's going to fail. I'm firmly in the middle. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed the first action scene, and I enjoyed the quieter, slower moments building up the universe and all that. But it was just that last 5 minutes where Chief takes his helmet off and it's basically them announcing, hey, this is where this story's going. And I'm just like, oh god, I don't know if I like that or not. I like the idea of it, but just not for Chief. Or maybe I would like it for Chief, or just, yeah, I'm so conflicted. Like, I really am conflicted. All we can do is watch and pray. If it does continue in this storyline, which I really think it is, I only pray that it pulls it off well. I just hope that it sticks to landing and it just makes me care. Because right now, I care about Chief and Halsey and Keys, both of them, simply because of my past attachment to them. It's like, hey, I know those characters. But these new characters, like Quan, I really don't give a fuck about. Like, I really don't. So they need to make me care about her and her struggle and her past and all that. So yeah, I just hope that they can pull this off. But I'm just kind of worried that this whole insurrection storyline is going to be the main focus. Because I think it will be, because it's pretty cheap and easy to do. Just human actors, put them in like sort of space age looking slums. Oh yeah, this is the insurrection in space. That's easy. That's much easier and cheaper to do than, oh, this is the inside hangar of a Covenant ship and all that. But that's where I'm worried, because the vast majority of Halo fans know the Halo story as UNSC humans versus the Covenant. That's it. The whole insurrectionist thing, that was sort of in the background of like, yeah, that kind of happened. And even in the books, I was like, yeah, that happened in the past. The main focus is Covenant versus humans. But in this show, I feel as if maybe the Covenant stuff is going to take the back seat, which I kind of don't want. Like, I don't want that. I want the focus to be the Covenant versus the humans. That is what I want. Humans versus Covenant. That is what I want. Fighting over a Forerunner mystery. I don't care really about the insurrectionists. Yes, what the UNSC did was bad, but in the grand scheme of things, the Covenant threat is fucking much larger and much more important. But I'm just afraid that that's where it's going to go. But I've not written off this show. I'm still going to watch it. I'm a Halo fan. Of course I'm going to watch it. The first episode to me was a good solid 7 out of 10. Good show. CGI here and there was a little acting and dialogue in some scenes from certain people were a little but other than that, it was alright. It was a good first episode. I think the shock of seeing the Chief without his helmet really did impact how I viewed that final 5 minutes. I was still just like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? I think I'm over that shock now, so that I can look back now and go, right, it wasn't too bad, but I'm still, but yeah, but that's really all I can do right now, is just keep watching, keep hoping that the storyline that they present us is good. Not just a good Halo storyline, but just a good story in general. I hope it's well acted, well paced, well choreographed, like the fights and all that. And we already know that season 2 has been greenlit, so I hope that they take the feedback from the first season and they can implement those changes, because really the only feedback that I've got right now is that, the elites look a bit stocky to me. Like, I think some people have already said they kind of look more like the Krogan from Mass Effect, like very bulky, so very Halo 4, Halo 5 elites, rather than the sort of sleek, sort of stealthy original elite design. And their headdresses aren't really that cool either. So if they could do that, and some of the sound effects were spot on, ripped straight from the game. Others weren't. And I was like, oh, that's a bit disappointing. And those little things do matter. Like, they really do. Like, as a fan, that just pulls you out. Like, imagine they re-released like a 4K Ultra Edition of Aliens, and it's the bit where they go into the alien nest and they start firing the pulse rifles, and it sounded totally different. Yes, it's a minor thing, but it completely takes you out of the movie, and you're just like, what? That doesn't sound right. That should sound like that. Or if somebody, if in a new Star Wars film, somebody ignited a lightsaber, but it didn't sound like a lightsaber, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? That doesn't sound right. Lots of little things add up to make something big. So if all these sound effects aren't right, then it becomes a big problem. So if they could just fix that. And the fact that I'm nitpicking about sound effects is kind of a good sign. Overall, I enjoyed the first episode. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be, because I really thought the acting was going to be bad. But it wasn't. Like, just one or two lines here and there were just a little, but it was okay. And I will be watching this week from week. They're not showing it over here in the UK yet, so I've had to find some other ways to find the show, wink wink, nudge nudge. That's just my thoughts on the show. This is a fucking long video, but I had a lot of thoughts and I had to get them out there and I had to share this. I don't know how much I'm going to edit this down, probably not, because I feel as if I need to get everything out there to really get across how I'm viewing this and how I'm thinking about this. But overall, 7 out of 10 for the first episode. Quite enjoyed it, but I'm conflicted, but we'll see how it goes. That's all we can do. That's all we can do, is just watch and see how it goes. Let me know what you thought of the show. Are you in the camp of loved it? Or are you in the camp of absolutely fucking hated it? Or are you like me, where you're just like, yes, it was good, but it was also bad, like, what the fuck? Let me know what you feel. Yeah, I'm going to keep doing this per episode as they come out. I'm going to share my thoughts. I'm going to basically recap it and then share my thoughts on what I think. I'm excited to go on this great journey with all of you, with the rest of us Halo fans, as we've been waiting for this for years. So let's hope it's a good journey. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye bye.